Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and today we're gonna be checking my progress with my Pendos palettes. So I'm gonna share with you how much I've used all of my Pendos palettes, if I've been able to use up any of the shades or hit ban on any of these shades, and how much product I was able to use up this month, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. In case you're new here, hi, my name's Sasha. I love indie makeup, I love colorful makeup, I love eyeshadows especially, and this year I've been really enjoying panning. I've been doing panning projects before as well, but not as many. I was only really panning like palettes before, so now we're really jumping into this year with a lot of panning projects. So hopefully you'll enjoy them all. And today I'm going to be updating, as I said, my Pendos palettes. I technically have 7 palettes to update because those are all in my project, but you'll see that there are like exceptions, and there are kind of like, it's not fully trying to use up the entire palettes this year. So let me just kind of walk you through them. So the palettes that are actually from last year, and now I have just like a couple little bits and pieces that I want to completely use up, are the Merry Christmas and Christmas Eve palette by Oden's Eye. When it comes to the Merry Christmas palette, I have a couple of shades here, and then a couple of shades here, and that's everything. I'm gonna insert a footage of how the shades looked like last month. Oh wait, I forgot one palette, but nothing changed with that one, so I'm just gonna show you a picture. Because I have debought it and sometimes even frankened some of the shades from the Merry Christmas palette into other palettes, and also my magnetic bands. I think it was the beginning of this year, because I only had a couple of shades left from that palette, so it just made no sense to actually keep the palette itself. But last month when I updated this, I have used the Merry Christmas palette 162 times, and for me, a use of a palette means creating a look with it. It doesn't matter if I use the entire palette for a look or just a couple of shades, but every single look that I use the palette for, I add one more use of that palette, and then I also separately count use of each shade, if that makes sense. So the Merry Christmas palette had 162 looks done with it, and now we're at 187. So I was able to use it 25 times, so almost every single day. And I've been really trying to use up as many shades as I could. So let me kind of walk you through the shades. First up, we have the shade Matcha Cookie, which last month had been used 54 times, and now it's been used 64 times. So I added 10 uses, and I'm completely done with it. It was here in this pan, and as you can see, it is no longer. So, and it kind of helped that it was also in my Pendos eyeshadows. So yeah, it took me 10 uses, and I'm completely done with that shade. It doesn't exist in my collection anymore, and I kind of have like similar shade, for example, in this palette that I've used today. So it's not like I can't recreate a look that I've loved. With the Merry Christmas palette, it's just, you know, it's a little bit older, so I wanted to use it up. So that's the Matcha Cookie. Then we have the shade Jingle Bell, which last month had 46 uses, and now it has 57 uses. So I've used it 11 times. 5 of those uses were on my nails, because it's a really nice nail polish. This is how it looks like currently. I think from the last time there's a huge pan because the layer of eyeshadow is like really shallow right now, and obviously I'm starting to like lose product in the center, and I'm starting to see a new pan here. So that one, and I think I should be able to use it up quite easily, though this one, like, it's kind of like it hard pans quite a bit, and you don't need a lot of product, honestly. Like it doesn't really, it's a very soft product, so you can swatch it a million times and it's not gonna look like you've used any of the shades, so that's kind of annoying. Then we have the shade New Leaf, which had 13 uses on it, and now it has 17 uses on it. I've actually been using it in my brows, mixing it with like oranges to create brown, because it's this kind of cool toned green shade, and it still doesn't have any pan, but I'm gonna focus on it in the next month because I really want to use up my Merry Christmas shades as quick as I can so that I can focus on the Christmas Eve. I would just like to, like, I haven't updated a used up palette in a while, and I would like to do that. So I'm trying to really focus on this palette, get all the shades out of my collection, and then I can like really focus on the Christmas Eve palette. So that's the shade New Leaf. Then we have the shade Best Wish. Best Wish had 56 uses, and now it has 59. It used to be at this spot, and as you can see, it's no longer with us. So I was able to completely finish 2 shades, and they're no longer in my collection. Then we have the shade Christmas Tree, which had 40 uses. Now it has 41. I've used it today a little bit in the outer corner. That's the only use that I have, but I will like really zone in on this in the next month. So this is how it looks like, and it's a very shallow pan, and obviously it's very small, so it shouldn't take that long. I don't think it's gonna take me more than 20 uses. Like I should be able to do that. Then we have the shade Gingerbread, which is like a orangey brown. I have it in this little magnetic palette, and Gingerbread looks like this. Mine is actually frankened with a little bit of setting powder because I'm trying to use it as a blush, because it doesn't really work for me as eyeshadow, and if I would use it as eyeshadow, I would probably only use it in autumn because it's a very autumnal orange, if that makes sense. But I was able to create a new pan in this. Obviously, I'm not actually counting it as a pan in any of my statistics because this already had a pan in the previous like original packaging, so now I'm not counting it since it's repressed. But this kind of shows that the level of like, it means that the pan isn't as full anymore, and also it means that we're really starting to lose a lot of the product. So that's the shade Gingerbread. It used to have 60 uses, now it has 92, and that's because I use it as a blush every single day, and a couple of times I would also do my makeup twice a day. When I was filming some like special videos and stuff, I would sometimes wear one look for my work, usually like kind of simpler look, something like this, and then the really colorful linery looks I would do at like 3 in the afternoon after I'm done with work. So, and I've been really trying to use this up, so I was always using this as a blush every single time I did my makeup. So this one has a lot of uses, and I'm gonna continue in that fashion in the next month, and maybe because obviously like that would be what, like almost 40 uses probably, considering the fact that I'm probably gonna do my makeup more than once, couple times a month. Even though now at summer I'm gonna have more time to do like really creative vlogs, but maybe I'm gonna want to like film 2 videos in a day, so I'm definitely gonna have at least 30 more uses, and with that I might have a significant pan here, so that would be wonderful. But as I said, we added 25 uses into this palette, and hopefully in the next 25 uses I might have a couple more finished shades. I would really like to completely use up the shade Jingle Bell by the next update. Have a huge pan in the shade Gingerbread, and have a pan in the shade New Leaf. That would be wonderful if that would happen. So that's kind of like my little goals for next month. Then we have the shade then we have the Christmas Eve palette, also by Oden's Eye. It used to have 154 uses, so 154 looks done with that palette, and now it has 181. So that means we added 27 uses, if I remember that, if I count that correctly. Which again, pretty nice number. Again, I've been using it almost every single day, at least as a blush and stuff. So first up, we have the shade was it Snow or something? It was something with snow. I'm not completely sure if that's the entire. I feel like there was another name for it. Snowflake. Yeah, the shade Snowflake. Which used to have 50 uses. Now it has 53, and it's actually completely used up. It was kind of like a silvery light shimmer shade that was frankened with one of my Colorpop shadows, and I no longer have that shadow because I was able to use it up. So Snowflake is completely used up. Then we have Ice Crystal, which is actually in this palette here. Ice Crystal is this kind of like light grayish matte shade, and it used to have 35 uses and now it has 60 uses, and that's because I use it with this. I mix these two shades to create like a peachy blush, so I use them always together, and that way I was able to add 25 uses on it. So this one is it's like really shallow in the pan. Like I feel like by the next update I could have a massive pan in this, because I'm kind of using it like proportionally the entire pan, and yeah, like it's getting really shallow, which is wonderful obviously for me. Then I have the Silvery Dream shade, which used to have 23 uses, and surprisingly it still has 23 uses because I haven't been focusing on it at all, but I will start focusing on it once I use up the Merry Christmas palette. And also the Christmas Eve is definitely a lot deeper, cooler, so it's gonna be better for after summer holiday or like the summer break. So that's the Silvery Dream. Then we have the shade Just Now, which is a matte green. It's my least used shade because it's very similar to a couple different greens in the Merry Christmas palette. So the shade Just Now had 13 uses and it still has 13 uses, and it's in this pan. And yeah, I don't really use it because I'm trying to use up the Merry Christmas greens, so that's the only reason. But I'm completely fine working on this in the second half of the year. Then we have the Filting Time, which is a shimmery kind of bronzy orange, and it's over here. It used to have 22 uses and it still has 22 uses, but the pan is super shallow. I'm gonna definitely use it at least once on my nails, so that's gonna be 5 uses, and then I'm gonna try to do at least like hopefully like 2 looks where I'm gonna incorporate this on my eyes, so you know, so that we would get to like 29-30 uses on this. But it's getting really shallow, so I feel like it probably doesn't have more than 10 uses in it anyways. Then we have the shade Nowhere, which is this kind of purpley gray, like it's gray, but it has like a purple undertone to it. And the shade Nowhere had 28 uses and it still has 28 uses, but I'm gonna use it in one of my BYOPs or like dupe palettes, so it's gonna have at least a couple uses, hopefully at least like 1 or 2 in the next month. And again, I'm gonna be focusing on it more towards the second half of the year. I might even mix it and like franken it with something at some point. Then we have the shade Wonderful, and the shade Wonderful is actually mixed with another shade which is called I think Starry Sky or something Sky. Sorry, it's the shade Blue Sky. So I have it franken here, so both Wonderful and Blue Sky, because I don't have that much of them. And I'm actually wearing them on my nails, so there's 5 uses on my nails, and those are the only uses that I have on this since last update. So both So the shade Wonderful had 42, now it has 47. And the shade Night Sky? How was it called? Blue Sky. And so the shade Blue Sky. So the shade Softly used to have 53 uses, now it has 68 uses, so I was able to use it 15 times. And I think this didn't have a pan, if I remember that correctly. And we're getting really to the bottom of this, so there's not that many uses of it left. And last shade we have the shade Night Sky, which Night Sky had 45 uses, and it still has 45 uses. I haven't used it. In the picture or the video, I don't know, from last time, you will see that there was no visible pan, but because the layer is like paper thin, and obviously sometimes like I accidentally sometimes when I'm putting this on the table, like I accidentally bump it into something or stuff like that, so a little bit of that shadow got dusted away. As I said, it's like a paper thin layer. If I would use it like 5 times, I would be completely done with that eyeshadow. It would be super easy, but it's pretty much the same eyeshadow that I have in my Pendos eyeshadows from another palette, so I'm not gonna be focusing on it now. I'm gonna start working on it again once I finish the Pendos eyeshadows blue. So as I said, the Christmas Eve went from 154 uses to 181 uses. Then next up, where is the palette? Okay, so next up is the Salmon 2 palette by Oden's Eye, which is like kind of my focused palette on this year, but obviously I'm first trying to completely use up the Christmas palette. I'm gonna show you the footage of last month, which where this palette had 87 uses and it weighed 150.66 grams. Currently it has 103 uses, so I was able to use it 16 times, which is quite nice number, I think. And let me show you how the palette looks like right now. So this is the current state. We have the shade Soft Cloud, which was at 18 uses, now it's at 19 uses. I only used it 1 time. Then the shade Mercury, which was at 18 uses, and it still is at 18 uses. Then the shade Neptune, which is my least favorite shade of this palette, and it stayed at 23 uses, the same as last month. Then we have the shade Deep Space, which was at 9 uses, and surprise, surprise, it's still at 9 uses. Then we have the shade Nebula, which was at 13 uses, and now it's at 20 uses. I actually used it 7 times, and that's because it's my Pendos eyeshadows. And this one is one of the most kind of, I don't know, a lot of these shades are very creamy and kind of easy to use up actually. But this one is almost, how to describe that, like clayey, or not clayey, but like, you know, like it's very thick. You don't use a lot of it. Like you can use it all over the eyes and it's not gonna look like anything in the pan. And you can do this, you can do that 10 times and it's still not gonna look like you've used that shade. So yeah, this one's gonna be a long run. Then we have the shade Meteor, and that one had 26 uses, and right now it has also 26 uses. I haven't used it at all. Then we have Starry Sky, which had 30 uses, and now it has the Starry Sky had 38 uses, and now it has 46 uses, so I was able to use it 8 times. Then we have the shade Galaxy, which was at 30 uses and now it's at 35, so I've used it 5 times. Hallucinations are staying at 8 uses. Then the shade Warm Light was at 32, now it's at 33 uses. Then we have Sunlight, which was at 17 and it stayed there. The shade Solar also stayed the same at 29 uses. Then we have the shade Eternal, which stayed the same, it's at 12 uses. And Black Hole was at 19 uses and it still is. So I only used a couple of these shades a couple times, but still I've expanded a couple of these pans and I'm trying to hit another pan. For this palette, I pretty much only want like to have pan in every single shade. That's my main goal. If I was able to use up some of these, obviously that would be wonderful, but the main goal is just to have a pan on every single shade. And as I said, this palette had 150.66 grams and now it has 150.42 grams. So I was able to use 0.24 grams of this palette. Obviously I don't measure the Christmas palettes because I have them kind of all over the place, so it would be impossible to track. But that's for the Sol Manitou palette. Then I have a mini all shimmer palette and it's the Beauty Bay Mini Charms palette, which is a small little 9 pan. Let me show you how it looks like, how it looked like last month. And last month it had 28 uses and now it has 52 uses, so I was able to use it quite a lot. I use it a lot as a face highlighter or in a corner highlight, under the brows highlight, so it gets used quite a lot. And for the mini charms, we have the shade Milky Way, which we started at 4 uses last month and now we're at 6 uses, so I was able to use it twice. Then we have the shade Supernova, which is staying at 3 uses. I haven't used it at all. Then we have the shade Infinity, which had 5 uses and now it has 6. I was able to use it once. Next up we have Aurora, which had 8 uses and now we're at 17 uses. And that's because it was my Pendos eyeshadows. So Aurora has a new pan and we've been able to add 9 uses. Then we have the shade Cosmic, which had 11 uses and now it has 14, so we were able to expand the pan that was already there. Then the shade Eclipse, which had 4 uses and now it has 7 uses. Which had 11 uses and now it has 14 uses. So again, was able to use it a couple times. Then we have the shade no, I was right. It was at 4 uses, now it's at 7. Sorry, I can't read. Then we have the shade Mystic on the last row. And Mystic had 1 use and it still has 1 use. Then we have the shade Pluto, which is my main highlighter. It was at 6 uses and now it's at 21. So I was using it quite a lot. I don't know if we had pan last time, but now it definitely has a huge pan. And I think if I'm gonna use it another like 20 times, I might use it up completely. And then the last shade is called Ethereal and it stayed at 1 use. I haven't used it at all. So I've been kind of focusing on specific shades, but at least I'm getting some progress. And the mini charms had 64.52 grams and now it has 64.10 grams. So I was able to use up 0.42 grams of product, which is half of a shade because each shade here has 1 gram. So, and I think it's obvious because I obviously hit a pan in the shade Aurora. I've expanded or I've used a lot of the shade Blue Dome, and then I have a couple of uses here and there. And because I use it as highlighter, you do use quite a bit of product. So that's that. For the mini charms, then I have this Shall We Makeup Liana pad, which also stayed here from last year because I haven't really done much with it last year. The third shade, as I said previously, is depotted from the Merry Christmas pad, so we're only talking about the other 3 shades. And the Liana pad had 31 uses and it stayed there, so nothing changed. The shade Trap Queen, the first one, is still at 13 uses. The shade Silvery Steak is still at 20 uses, and the shade Full Bloom is still at 12, so nothing changed. But because I've used the new leaf, the weight of this palette changed a bit. I was able to use up 0.03 grams because it was at 66.93 grams and now it's at 66.90 grams. So it's getting lighter, but only because there's one of the shades depotted here. Then a palette I don't even know if I still want to work on, and I might just throw it out of this project, is the Hello Bean palette by Shroud in collaboration with Betty Bean. I'm just not really enjoying that. I do like a couple of these shades, but not a lot. So I don't know how I'm gonna continue with this one. But the Hello Bean had 39 uses. Let me show how it looks like, how it looked like last month. And now it's at 40 uses. I was able to only use it once because one of the shades was in one of my BYOPs. So we have the shade Ghastly, which stayed at 5 uses. Afterlight stayed at 4 uses. Crypt stayed at 20 uses. Then the Woodsboro, which is actually not here anymore. I have different shade here. It stayed at 4. It's Showtime went from 10 uses to 11. That's the only shade that I've used. And then Black Flame stayed at 5 uses. Loser's Club at 5 uses. Ghoulish stayed at 11 uses. And Wicked stayed at 10 uses. So yeah, I'm not even, like, I don't even want to use it, honestly. I can use a couple of these mattes in my BYOPs and stuff, and I do like the shade Ghastly, but otherwise I'm not really enjoying this palette, so I don't know if I'm gonna keep using it in this project. And it's definitely my least it's the least of a priority. So if I'm gonna completely use up all the previous palettes, then I might start focusing on the Hello Bean, but that's very unlikely, and I think I'm just gonna treat it as a collection of singles, not as a palette, because I just don't use it as a palette anymore. And then the last palette, oh, and for some reason the Hello Bean went from 141.69 grams to 141.49 grams, which would mean I have used 0.2 grams. I've only used it once, so I don't know. But since I change up the shades a lot, maybe something shadow, well, not shadow, but sometimes when you move single shadows, you lose a little bit of that eyeshadow because it just dusts off. So maybe that's the reason, I'm not sure. And then the last is the Tinkerbell palette. So let me show you how it looked like last month, where it was at 64 uses. It's currently at 70 uses, and a lot has changed even in such a short time. So the first 3 shades are not original to this palette, and I'm not really focusing on them. So we have the shade Big Smile, which is a single from Colourpop, and it stayed at 10 uses. Then we have the Royal Europe single shade from Nomad. It's called Royal Orb, if I remember that correctly, and it stayed at 9 uses. Then we have the shade Endgame, which is actually from the Legend of Korra palette, and this one stayed at 12 uses, but I might use it in some of my BYOPs in the next couple of weeks. And these shades I don't really care for hitting a pan, they're just there. But what I really wanted to do was at least hit a pan on the last 6 shades, or completely use them up if I could. So we have the shade Think, which is used up. Then we have the shade Pixie Dust, which used to have 17 uses. Now it has 20 uses, and there's a major ban because it was one of my repressed shadows, and again there was just like tiny layer of product, so once I used it once or twice, the entire layer just disappeared on my eyes. So Pixie Dust has quite a lot of visual progress, even though I haven't really used it all that much. And then we have the shade Neverland. I actually have the shade in two different pans, and the pan that had the majority of the shade is completely done. So this shade, so the spot that was Neverland had 38 uses, now it has 41 and it's completely gone. And I don't have that anymore, which just makes me so happy. Then I have the shade Sleep, which stayed at 20 uses. Then the place between actually shattered for me a couple months ago, so it is currently a Franken of a little bit of the shade Neverland and then a couple different lighter shades. And this one stayed at 0 uses. I haven't used this Franken shade at all yet. And then we have the shade Awake, which stayed at 22 uses. So I only used the shade Pixie Dust and used up the shade Neverland. But this palette went from 135.16 grams to 132.66 grams, and that's because obviously I don't have the metal pan here anymore. I've decluttered that one, like I have it in my palette of emptied up magnetic pans so that I can use them for frankening and stuff. And that is, I think the pen is like 1.94 grams, so that kind of changes up the weight a lot. But I was actually able to use a lot of my palettes many times, and we were able to get rid of 3.39 grams from my palette. I think it should be actually 1.45 grams because obviously I'm counting the entire weight of this palette, but obviously it's missing the metal pan. So if I don't count the metal pan into the equation, we were able to use up 1.45 grams of product, which is incredible. Obviously it is largely it's largely contributed to the fact that I use a lot of these shades as highlighters or blushes and stuff like that, or on my brows, so obviously I'm gonna use it a lot, and I think it's pretty obvious from the numbers of uses. So I'm very happy for this month. Like I think it's incredible. I'm very excited for the progress, and I hope that by next month, we currently have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shades in the Merry Christmas palette. I hope we're gonna be at 3 shades with the next update. That would make me just so extremely happy, and I'm gonna really try my hardest to get to that point. And I'm gonna try to use up the shade Pixie Dust, since it's not just in this project, but it's also in my Pendos eyeshadows, has been rolled in there. So that's kind of like a big task for me, but I hope I can do that. I'm gonna try to work on a couple of the shimmers. I might be able to use them up on my nails, because lately I haven't been really happy with the shimmers from Oden's Eye, like from the Christmas palettes, because lately you can really tell that they're old, and yeah, they just don't really work the same on the eyes, and there's so much fallout, and they create like a little bit of a weird texture on the lids. They're not expired, I don't think so, but it's definitely their time to leave my collection, so I'm just gonna use it on my nails because it doesn't really matter, and maybe try it like 1 or 2 times on my eyes for the last time to just like, you know, say farewell. But yeah, that's my update. Let me know if you think that I did a good job. What palettes are you currently working on, and what is your prediction for me? Like, do you think I'm gonna be able to reach my goals, or what are you kind of envisioning for me for the next month? Let me know down below. I will upload will I upload this regularly? Yeah, I think I will, because my vacation isn't until a couple days after the next update. So yeah, I should be able to update it normally. So hopefully you'll have your scheduled fun time. But that's everything for today. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll be super happy to see you tomorrow with another video. So bye.